Well, today we are interviewing Ken and Debbie Norris, and they are missionaries and have been missionaries with the Navajo for how many years?
31 years, since 1988.
Wow. Now, Debbie, you grew up on the mission field, so missions is something that you've experienced much of your life.
Yes. I was 3 years old when my mom and dad went to Ethiopia, Africa.
Wow. And did you grow up there then in Ethiopia?
My younger years, yes. Ethiopia closed due to communism. And so when I was 10 years old, we had to return to the States. And at that point, my dad went to Connecticut and pioneered and started a church up there. It was a little bit of a culture shock, Africa to Connecticut.
I would guess so. But Ken, you didn't come to know the Lord until when? You were a teenager?
14, yeah.
Then how did that come about?
Initially, a friend of my sister's, they were Bluebirds, Girl Scouts, something like that. A friend would come over to our house and visit my sister, and she would tell us about Jesus or invite us to church. And I didn't want anything of it. I got mad at it a couple times, but she just kept coming back, a faithful witness, and not pushy, but just kept coming back. And eventually, the bus ministry got a hold of us and started coming to church then. And I liked it.
And that was in Kansas City?
Yes, at Overland Park Baptist Temple.
Wow. So you came to know the Lord then. And then when did you feel called to the ministry?
Well, I would say a senior at my spring semester in high school as a senior. The Lord specifically about that. Just always in my heart, I felt like telling people about the Lord and spending time in the Bible is something that I couldn't imagine myself doing anything else but that. Of course, being a missionary, you learn to wear many hats. But it was a missionary that our church supported, the late Cliff Fish Crab, a missionary to the Navajo, that invited me and a couple other boys to go to the reservation after we graduated to help him build churches, the construction aspect of it. And at that time, I'd already considered to go to Bible college at BBC in Springfield. So I was weighing, should I go? I wanted to go. And that was the introduction to the Navajo, and I felt like I needed to go. But I opted on it, did not go, thinking, well, I need to stay and raise some money for college that fall. But it was through college and that introduction during college of the Navajo that God used to introduce me to them as I went into the missions courses. I think thinking about when the professor would talk about Africa, Brazil, Paraguay, I would be thinking Navajo, even though I'd never been there. And so what became a what would you say, a curiosity or for a kid fresh out of high school became a curiosity, became a burden, became a call. And it wasn't until after 3 years of school and 7 months of marriage that I actually went forward to in a church and said, God has called me. But I looked way back in high school that God had been dealing with me.
So did the two of you meet when you were there at college?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Wow.
I chased her till she caught me.
Oh, that is terrific.
She didn't want to go. Well, why don't you tell that? Because
I was in the mission prayer band and continent of Africa, and I thought that would be a great place to find someone going back to Africa. That was kind of where I thought the Lord was leading me, and he kept pursuing me, and I liked him. We were great friends. We hung out together in college and career things. We did things together, and group activities. And finally, the Lord just spoke to my heart, and he said, Debbie, you cannot take the gospel to the wrong address. I said, okay, I will date him, and we'll see where this goes. We've been here 30 years now.
That's so fun. You've been married for how long?
35, and about 3 weeks is our anniversary.
And you've got how many children?
4 boys. And on top of that, 8 grandchildren.
Way to go. That's terrific.
We had them this past week, and the last one's left just this morning.
Okay.
So So we coming off a family reunion. It's been quite a buzz, quite a good time.
That is fantastic. All right, give me a little bit of your history in working with the Navajo then.
Okay. Well, in a concise manner, we have been instrumental in starting 3 churches, or not starting 3 churches, but helping to establish 3 churches with the mentorship of other missionaries. And then there's 2 churches that we kind of struck out on our own, and the Lord led us to lead the beginning of it and establish them as well. So all in all, about 5 churches that we've been involved in, and 2 that we started ourselves.
Now, the first one you started by yourself. Tell me about it. I understand it was way out and far away from the urban centers. Is that right?
Yes. It's in an area called Black Mesa. It's on the Navajo Nation, of course. And the reservation itself is the size of the state of Indiana. You can relate to that being from Elkhart.
Yes.
And yet it's got about 180 to 200,000 Navajo people on it. And there's about 300,000 total, but on border towns and spread across the United States and around the world, but about 180 to 200,000 on the reservation. That's a lot of people, but that in the size of the state of Indiana, you've got a lot of wide open spaces.
Yes.
Black Mesa is 20 miles west of a community called Kayenta, Arizona. And Kayenta has got the status of having the most remote post office in the United States.
Okay.
So we were 20 miles west of there. We had a highway contract, no post office there. But just 35% of the people are still waiting for electricity. 51% of the people got up this morning and used the outhouse because they have no running water in their home. And for 7 of the 12 or 13 years that we were there, 12, 13 years that we were there, for 7 of those years, we hauled our water anywhere from 200 to 500 gallons at a time. And I don't miss hauling the water, but I miss meeting the people at the well and the gathering there. It was a long process. I'm not sure exactly what all you want to know, but I think some highlights of it is just, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I'm curious about that. So when you went there, was there a nucleus of believers that you were working with, or did you start from scratch? How did that happen?
Just from scratch, I guess you would say. There's not a nucleus. It's just we were actually praying for an area in Kayenta, and that didn't materialize, and for housing and so forth. You can't purchase property on a reservation. You can only lease it. But there was a trailer court in Black Mesa and in Kayenta. The one, by the time we got our housing ready to go, a mobile home to move out there, Kayenta had filled up. And they said, well, there's another place about 20 miles west of here called, and they had a little trailer court and a trading post there. And when we drove up to it, we just had peace about it. And the first step to go, I went up on the mesa and I looked down at the roads, the dirt roads, and kind of sketched out a road map and went down below and tried to find the houses I saw there and just began to look around, and people would then meet at the trading post coming in, and we would see them and begin to forge relationships that way.
Well, we had neighbors in Black Mesa in the trailer court, and so that's kind of where we started with the trailer court. At that time, our kids were all young. Our oldest was just starting first grade. So the children playing together gave many open doors to meet families.
Yes.
Yeah. Did you need to homeschool your children, or were there schools that they were involved with?
Our oldest son, we did put in first grade in the public school out here. It was a 20-minute bus ride into town for a first grader, and the riders on the bus were kindergarten through high school. Because of the distance, they only rode one bus for everybody, and that was kind of a negative hit on us. And so the next year I did begin homeschooling them, and I homeschooled them up through junior high school. Then high school, they went back to the public school.
All right. So here you are. You're out in this trailer court. You got a trading post. You're meeting neighbors. You're meeting people through your children. And And then what do? You just start sharing Jesus, and one by one, people start to come to know the Lord?
Yes, and one by one, it's slowly. But we began meeting in our home with the plan to get what they call a church site lease. The reservation is just that. It's a reserved land. It's on American soil. The Navajo people have their own government, their own president, vice president, so forth. Everything that they do and everything that is done on the reservation is earmarked and watched by the BIA, the federal government, called the Bureau of Indian Affairs. And so if we want a lease site, we go through the reservation tribe, we go through the state of Arizona, we go through the federal government. It's a long process. It took some 5 years to go through. And so in the meantime, we're meeting with people in our home. We're meeting with people. A trailer came available on the trailer court. And there for a while, we met in the little restaurant that was next to the trailer court. So eventually we got our land and our building. And it was about
5 years.
No, it was
9 years, so we got the building.
Yeah, so about 6 years.
7 years.
Before we actually got the building. And so from there, it just continued to meet and began to grow. And just a long process of meeting people. The reservation is not a place of fast-paced, multifaceted ministry. It's one person, one brick at a time. And when we left the church, began to leave the church, we were running about 45 in attendance.
And then did you pass it on to some other leadership at that point?
We did leave it on, pass it on to a man by the name of Willie Sosi. He's there now, Navajo pastor. And so the church is doing, we've heard they're running about 60, 80 in attendance, which is, Black Mesa is an area in a 20 to 30 mile radius. You've got approximately 1,500. It's basically 2.2 people per square mile. And so to have a church of 60 to 80 in attendance, it's like a mega church on the reservation.
That's terrific. Numbers are all relative, aren't they? And that's just that's phenomenal. That's great.
The building that we used, we had a 28 by 64 building that we put there. As the half of it was the auditorium, half of it was the fellowship hall, nursery, and Sunday school stuff. Well, they've kicked all those walls out, and now that's the youth room and fellowship hall. And they built another building. October 2014, they called us back to dedicate their new buildings, a new 2,000 square foot auditorium. October 2014. And now they're actually merging the two buildings with the bigger foyer and some Sunday school space. Just
that's got to be so rewarding.
My not imagination, but just all praise to God. It's phenomenal what God has done there.
Now, then after that, if I remember reading your literature correctly, you sort of due to the health of one of your children, you decided you needed to be centered in more of an urban area. Is that right?
Yes. Warm air climate is what we needed. In Black Mesa, we were at about 7,800 elevation, and we had a lot of snow and a lot of cold days up there. And our youngest son had contacted RSV, and that was really, really hard on his lungs, and he needed a warm air climate to recuperate from that.
We were running frequently, which was 90 miles away, and that got old real fast.
And so you went actually to Phoenix. So now you are in a totally different environment, but you're still ministering to Navajo. So you had to find Navajos that now lived in the city. That must have been quite a challenge.
It really was a unique challenge. I think what really helped is Debbie's more the techie than I am. I'm more hands-on. But I stumbled across a statistician in Window Rock on the reservation. He told me about through census.gov and America.gov. It's factfinder.gov, AmericanFactFinder.gov, and USCensus.gov. You can track any people group across the nation by city. Well, I found I started playing with it. You can track it even by zip code tabulation. So we took this city of 3 million people, took a zip code map of it, and we began to find how many Navajo people were in each zip code area. And we were able to find, create a visual composite of where the concentrations of them are. And from there, we began to study people patterns. We found out where places were, like Indian School Hospital in Phoenix. There was a Indian jewelry store and what they call a wholesale job where they get their wares. We got online and found out where they had an American Indian parade, just where they set up venues and just where they concentrate. And quite frankly, it's funny, when we found out the zip code area that had the greatest concentration of Navajo people in it, we went to Walmart at the first of the month because they get their government checks, even in the city. And so we did visitation at Walmart the first of the month.
That's strategic.
Navajo there. That just put people together there. I would have to say, though, that in the very, I wouldn't say I was resistant. We had to be there. But I really didn't know what we were supposed to do there. I didn't know what God was doing. Since a senior in high school, God had called me to the reservation. Now he's asking me to leave. I knew there were Navajo people down in Phoenix, but I didn't know how to find them. I didn't know how to put my hands around it.
Just kept doing the next thing.
Yeah, we just kept doing the next thing and following our heart. And all this search for the Navajo is in my heart. I wasn't sold if that's what God wanted me to do. I was just doing what I felt in my heart. I didn't know really how to do it. And as I began to seek, do you remember Paul in Troas when he headed west? He came from the east. He couldn't go north. He couldn't go south. Couldn't go to Bithynia.
Right.
Any decision he made, he couldn't make the right one. God said no, no, no.
Yes.
Yes. It seemed like every time I tried to make a decision, God said, "Nope, I want you over here." And
Okay.
I want you over here. And what we did is, after we found out the concentrations of them in the zip code area, I thought, okay, Lord, if you want a church here, there's plenty of churches they can go to. But I knew in my heart that the Navajo people were a special culture of people. So we thought, well, let's go visit the churches that are in this zip code area and just see how many Navajo are in them. We'll visit other Baptist churches there. And we did that one by one, week by week, just going to different churches. In this one particular time, I wrote the address down. We went downtown, and I got the address wrong. Nothing existed there, a church, nothing. And I'd been bumbling all this time that even in my thoughts at that time, it was going up and down 19th Avenue there in Phoenix. I was thinking, man, I can't even get the address right. And my wife says, well, we might as well go to this church here. She pointed one at a particular church as we passed by, or we're going to miss church altogether this morning. We popped in there about ready to finish Sunday school, about 10 minutes before Sunday school is out. We met the pastor in between Sunday school and service. And as we were visiting and telling him who we were and what we were doing and asking things about the church, my son Jonathan began to pull me on a shirt sleeve. And he's in middle school, and he knows better than that, but he was emphatic about something. He said, Dad. He said, check it out. And I turned, and on their missions board, they had a picture. It was of a couple, a Navajo couple, that had come to the church and had visited the church, and the church just decided to take their picture and put their picture up there and pray for them. Well, it was Willie and Lena Sosi.
Huh.
But we just turned the work over to in Black Mesa.
Amazing.
And he says, do you know them? And I said, yes. And I told him the relationship. And it was like instant rapport. Found out that this pastor was partial Native American up in Ojibwe, up in Wisconsin, I think it is, or Minnesota.
Okay.
He had me give our testimony during the church service and during announcement time. After church, we went back in his office. He's going to talk to me about some things. I really know what, just to get to know each other. And I passed this big zip code map. It was like a 4 by 6 foot. It was a huge zip code map. And I probably looked kind of nerdy because I had all these numbers in me. I was interested in it. He says, you find that interesting? And I started telling what we were doing about tracking where the Navajo people are. That's how we pinpoint. Tell me, where are the Navajo in this? And so, well, actually, your 85017 zip code area has got the highest concentration of Navajo anywhere on the valley. And like that, he says, why don't you just start your church here? And I said, are you serious? He says, why shouldn't I be? He says, we've got this church, we've got 200 seats in it, 250, and why should we use it just a couple times a week? He says, we've already got a Hispanic body working here. We've also got a Signs of Life Deaf ministry here. What's one more?
Exactly.
And just like that, God did it and put it together. A couple weeks later, we had started, I guess we'd actually already started the internet and the website. We'd started online Bible courses.
Because we had another building and then it had fallen through. So we had to find a place and we didn't know where we were going, but God did.
Yeah, we'd meet there for like 2 or 3 weeks, I think even. But
yeah.
We met in his pastor's class. We met from 4 to, they still meet there from 4 to 6 p.m. Because the other churches meet in the morning, and then 2 other churches, ourselves and another, use another facility, the fellowship hall in the afternoons. So we outgrew the pastor's classroom, and then we went into the fellowship hall. And again, we were running about 40, 45 when we released it to a Navajo pastor. And so I'd never seen God just put people together like he did.
Isn't that exciting? Yeah, at our church, we've got an Hispanic church and an Ethiopian-speaking church. And I love it. I love it when we've got the partnership that's going between the different churches. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. We stepped into one of the Ethiopian services when we were there.
That's right.
Did you?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I had to. I slipped my mind, but.
Yeah, and it's such a blessing to work with these other churches, such a partnership. And so that's neat that you could experience that right there.
Mm-hmm.
Now, is everything done in English?
I speak in English, but when other people speak, they'll speak in Navajo or in English. Now, are you talking the work down in Phoenix?
Yeah, both and wherever.
Presently, both the church in Black Mesa and in Phoenix, it's pretty well done in Navajo. The preachers and the men speak Navajo. The ladies in Sunday school, they teach English.
Okay.
When they meet together before they split open to classes, they sing in Navajo and English, bilingual. So
you were in Phoenix for how long?
10 years, from 2005 to 2015.
Okay. And then you went to sort of an existing church that needed revitalization or something?
Yes.
Down in Page, Arizona, is that right?
Yes.
Tell me about that transition.
Well, when we released the church in Phoenix, Justin's health was fine. He had grown and matured, and his body had strengthened, and he was fine to come back up here. He only had a few more years of school anyway. And so we were looking to come back up on the reservation. And we saw many places that a church could be started, but yet we began to see many churches that were just floundering, or leadership needed to be strengthened. And there was about 4 or 5 churches that I could pop off then and list that just simply needed a pastor. And Page was not even on the radar at the time. We were actually coming up to or from Utah area on a furlough, and we stopped by the church. We knew the founding pastor, and we knew there was a new pastor there. We had not really gotten to know him, and we just stopped by the church. And when we did, we found out that a lady there was cleaning the church. She said, well, our pastor left Sunday night. And this was like a Tuesday.
He just resigned.
And
okay.
he was there 4 years. And so they were without a pastor. We were coming on the tail end of our furlough. This was actually October, November. And usually in November, December, you don't get many dates as a missionary in a church because churches are busy with holidays and stuff like that. And so we had a little bit of time off. we finished our time up in Utah, came back down to Page, and we said, well, we'll pulpit supply for a while if you'd like. And so we did that, and we were there through December and portion of January, and then we kicked up our furlough on through April, May, I think it was. And it was there that we learned and discovered the condition of the church. Without a whole lot of details, the founding pastor was there for about 12, 13 years, did a phenomenal job. The church was running over 80 in attendance, $1 annual budget, which again, Page is just off the reservation. It's like about 3 miles off the reservation. It's called Border Town. And just a great church. And then the incoming pastor was there for 4 years, and during that time, the church had declined. They missed 10 mortgage payments, and a lot of reasons for that. I won't get into the details of it.
Sure.
And even that there were some things that that he apologized for and recognizing his Lord. And it was all leveled there and everything prayed about. But yet, with those issues and the incoming pastor, the church had just declined to about 15 to 20 in attendance.
Okay.
And the mortgage of the church is held in trust by a Christian organization, not a bank. Had it been in a bank, they surely would have lost their buildings after missing 10 mortgage payments.
Yeah.
And so the Lord's, took care of that. But since we've been here, it'll be 4 years, July 3rd. It hasn't been a fun ministry as such, There was a lot of division and strife in the church when we came back. A lot of people came back and more or less to see what was going on, more or less to not to worship, so to speak. But they're just coming back. Test the new waters, I guess.
Yes.
But for the first 6 to 8 months, very cold, I don't want to get into the particulars of that, but we just kept preaching Jesus, love God, love people.
Yeah, church revitalization can often be far harder than church planting, can't it?
That's what we found out.
Yeah.
And we walked into it knowing what had happened and what was going on, but until you do something like that, you don't really know. And yet at the same time, and I praise God for this, that God had seasoned me and continues to do so. But I'm glad that there wasn't like a younger pastor there that it was about 2 years ago that unity came. And since that time, we've seen 15 people get saved. And,
wow.
Whether it's a business, a church, a marriage, a family, a friendship, when they're squabbling, they're always like this.
Yes.
But now that unity has come, they're starting to learn again. Let's go out. It's not about ourselves. And they're starting to really reach out and to minister and getting our feet back on the ground. They've gotten what was a $440,000 mortgage down to $24,000.
Oh, that's amazing.
Not all in our time, but through previous to our coming, they sold some property. But then also, since we've been here, they've been able to quit a lot of that debt. So our goal is this. I'm always looking for a way to leave. No love lost, but just that's my goal. I've always found it better when a Navajo pastor's there. It's going to work better, a national pastor. And so we're looking to either I would love to be able to have that debt acquitted when we leave, or
yes.
at least we run utilities for a parsonage. If we can put a decent mobile home there, and for a would-be pastor, then the church could afford the utilities and housing for a pastor, and then a pastor could come in with the idea of making a full-time, a part-time job, and the church take care of his housing and that would allow me financially to walk away. But until recently, I wouldn't have done that because the structure of the church and the strength of the church wasn't there yet. They just needed someone to hold their hand and see them. And I would say that on all our churches in a ministry, I keep going back, Matthew 16:18, where Jesus said, "I will build my church."
Yes.
I remember in college hearing fiery sermons about that. And the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. But I look back at that first part. God kept telling me, "I will build my church." You don't need to go back to the Greek to find out what that means. I will build my church. And God's going to take care of what's his. And if we'll just get out of the way, be faithful, and let him do what he's going to do, he'll take care of what's his. And so God be praised.
Well, praise the Lord for that report. It's when the church is sort of inward focused and complaining and being critical, it's really hard to turn that around so that they become outward focused and think about reaching people rather than about themselves, right?
Exactly. That's what we're here for. That's why God left us here, to reach out.
Well, I don't know that Page area well. Years ago, I had a friend that pastored in that town, Stephen LeBar, and so I visited there at that point.
Yeah.
I think it was like a conservative Baptist church or something back then, and then I spent time when I pastored in Parker, Colorado. Some people in the church went and rented a houseboat, a whole bunch of couples. And so I spent a week on a houseboat. What's a big body of water there? Lake Powell, is it?
Yes.
And that goes right down to Page. And so I was close to that on the water. Do you guys ever get out on the water there?
Occasionally. Occasionally. I kind of chuckle because when we first came here, we lived in Black Mesa. Black Mesa is 90 miles away from it. We came to it, but it was like in and out, point A. We'd gone to the lake maybe once, but now that we're here, I think, why didn't we take the boat? Why didn't we do more? Why didn't we go see this? But I was so focused in Black Mesa.
Oh, I know.
We get out, and but when we first came here, Debbie and I, we got a couple of those little inflatable rafts from Walmart and went out there, and we were just drifting on this. I thought, man, we get to live here?
It was an incredible body of water. And back then, when I was younger, we'd jump off the cliffs into the water and explore it. It was just a lot of fun. So I've got sort of pictures of Page in my mind from those little experiences from long ago. So it helps me visualize you there. But you're working primarily with Navajos in your church, right?
Yes, exclusively. I mean, we reach out to all people, but that's just
We sing in Navajo. Some of the song is in Navajo language, and the preaching is in English. So anyone is welcome, but we do cater to the Navajo people. Well,
this is embarrassing to tell you this, but one of my favorite book series was by a guy named Hillerman, and he wrote all these books of this policeman and then his protege, and so I just loved those books. And from them is about my whole education about the Navajos.
Well, you actually got a pretty good education then. Those books are pretty accurate.
Yeah.
Well, I want our church and anyone else who watches this videotape to be praying for you folks. So how can we be doing that?
I would say for the present work, just pray for continued unity and outreach. Pray for God's provision to, God's going to do it. But I'm always looking for a way to jump out, to get someone else in. God's got his timing, but the church is at a phase now it comes down to dollars, a point of dollars. If certain things were in place financially, we would be gone.
Okay. What would you do? Would you go then plant another church or something?
Well, what we want to do is leadership training in the churches that need pastors.
Okay.
And, we would also initiate a voice-activated, interactive online Bible course online.
All right.
Something we started in Phoenix and we got some feedback from, but as the church began to grow. I didn't have time to nurse it, and wanted to work with that and just see where that leadership grows, to establish, rather than to go into church and into an area and to work with the leaders in the church, and,
Gotcha.
and to circuit the reservation in that regards.
Yeah, we really saw that need when we were looking to come here. There were several different churches that were asking us, please come and help us. And we just see a real need to train Sunday school teachers and preachers, on how to do it, to step in and keep the churches together.
So we're praying for your church that you can continue to do outreach, meet some of those finances, maybe free you up so that you can do your next stage of ministry. Any other things we can be praying for you folks about, whether it's ministry or personal, either way?
The prayer request, Debbie?
The church would be committed workers. I think that's every church's prayer request. But when you're starting over in a small community, you get a reputation. And so it's hard to get people to come in and really get behind you. So
the town of Page is like 7,800 people. And so, when you get, like she said, it gets a reputation. And so they're coming, are unified, and they're wanting to move forward.
Yeah.
I'm glad that the Lord's not done with them.
All right. Well, we'll sure be praying for you in regard to that.
Yeah.
And,
we know, like you said, numbers are relative. They're in Anaheim. Your church that you've taken has had ups and downs, but numbers are relative. I heard of a pastor that was in California. He's praying for 300 Sunday school workers for the next year because he's got a huge church. So it's relative to numbers, but still the need is the same.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think I'll probably show this video beyond our church just over the internet. So I'll do some editing on it and that kind of stuff. But right now, what would you like to say to the people of Anaheim Baptist Fellowship?
Thank you for your prayer. Thank you for your financial support. And just thank you for your interest to the Navajo people. And, finances, that's the practical thing of it. But prayer is what gives power to missions. The call keeps a missionary. But sometimes knowing behind you, holding the rope, that's sometimes what keeps you there. And so I appreciate your prayers and your support.